Hi, welcome to the Philly Foursome podcast, our second podcast. We are excited about a great topic we're going to reveal in just a minute. I'm John Bierkin, Director of Instruction at Aronimink Golf Club, joined with my Philly Foursome team members, Mr. Braden Shattuck, Director of Instruction at Rolling Green Golf Club. Braden happens to also be the 2023 PGA Club Pro National Champion. Mark Sheftick, Director of Instruction at the beautiful Sunnybrook Golf Club and owner of the Sheftick Performance Center, and Mr. Michael Little, owner of Clubhouse 54, and our putting specialist, someone who's becoming quite the putting coach in our area, who utilizes his Quintic ball roll technology, which is pretty cool. Good to be with you, gentlemen.
Hi, John.
Always a pleasure with this group.
So here we are, episode number 2. Episode number 1 was an introduction to each of us and really the genesis behind starting the Philly Foursome. So hopefully the listeners had a chance to take a look at episode 1. So episode 2, we are going to dive into the topic of what does the road to improvement, getting better, taking your game to the next level look like for you as the golfer. And so with Philly Foursome, we are a golf instruction, game improvement centric team. So through our social media outlets, through our subscription channel on Patreon, and through this podcast, we are going to continue in the future to bring on experts and guests, those in the teaching world, those in the golf world, with topics and ideas that can help you, the listener, with your game. And so we thought it made a lot of sense to start, as we really get going in episode 2, look at those items and strategies and things that you need to do, you should do, and think about to help you really start to take your game to the next level. And so I thought it would be appropriate to start with our most senior member of the Philly Foursome, Mr. Mark Sheftick. He can kind of take charge and lead us off. And it's interesting that I say the most senior member because Mark actually is going to be moving up a set of tees here as we head into the summer. So needless to say, we know how old Mark is. So Mark, why don't you take it away? Maybe dive in a little bit, both from a teaching and coaching perspective, but also as a player, when you look back on, anecdotal experiences as a player too, maybe as a junior or collegiate player, and as someone who played the mini tours and someone who really nationally has been one of the top players in the country, who's played in multiple PGA championships. When you look back, what were some of the things that were important for you to help you improve and take your game to the next level as a player? And then maybe also, after you talk about that, take the perspective as a teacher and a coach.
Well, thanks for the introduction, John. Yes, I'm not going to hide. I am moving up a set of tees because I can't hit the ball as far as certain people, but I still feel pretty competitive. Road to improvement. It's a great topic because when students come in for a lesson, you always start the lesson as an interview, and you try to figure out what their needs are, what they're looking for. And I try to convince most of my students that the 1-hour lesson model is a very poor way to improve, and you try to turn yourself into a coach. And when you become a coach, you take on a journey with a player. And when you take on that journey, it's just not about fixing a swing. It's about how do you think? How do you respond? Breaking down their game in many different aspects and helping them understand what it does take to improve. It's not about just making this pretty golf swing. It's about how to get the ball in how to get the ball in the hole in the least amount of strokes. So what I did as a junior is I broke down my father, Ted Sheftick, who was my coach. We broke down my game in 9 categories: T-ball, long approach, short approach, scrambling, short game, specialty shots, putting, equipment, and course management. And we would go through those categories and we would try to figure out where I'm strong and where I'm weak. And when I was competing, in my personal opinion, I thought being a great driver of the golf ball had to be one of the most important. Being a great driver of the golf ball to me is one of the most important things a player does, because if I get off the tee well, I have a chance. I also grew up understanding that wedges are a massive part of scoring. If I want to compete at a high level, I have to be good from 100, from my wedges, 100 yards and in, my scrambling, my scoring, and obviously putting. Putting is 40% of your score. So those sets of clubs are probably what I practiced the most. As a junior, I worked hard on developing a one flight pattern. I tried to take 50% of the golf course out of play. I said to my dad, as a player, I have to take ownership of what I want. And my eye saw a draw. So I said to my dad, I don't care. I want to play. I want to hit the ball straight. And if I miss it, I want to go left. So I know where I'm aiming. I know it's predictable. I want to rely on that. So driving the ball well, wedges, putting, and forming a one-sided flight to me is how I thought about being a better player. And when I did play with good players, I noticed that they didn't really do anything special. They were just really good in all categories. You saw a lot of different types of swings, a lot of different personalities, but they drove the ball well. Their wedges were solid. They putted very well. Their course management was good. And I take that same system into my students. We try to find a roadmap. I'm going to reiterate one point again. 1 hour lesson, see you next week, is a poor way to improve. Becoming someone's coach, going on that journey, coming up with that roadmap, dissecting their game in those categories, we can really find out where you're strong and where you're weak, how to delegate practice time so we can keep the strong areas strong and improve the short areas to make improvements. And then once we start getting those improvements in, then we start figuring out a practice plan, what tournaments you're going to play, and that's kind of how I did it.
Okay, and Mr. Shattuck, what about you? What are your thoughts as it pertains to, some of the important ingredients it takes to improve?
Yeah. The road to improvement is a long one, and I think that's not one thing that anybody wants to hear, especially when I'm giving lessons. Nobody wants to hear that it's going to take a long time, and but it's something we all need to hear and realize. For me personally, I started playing golf when I was 5, tournaments when I was 10, and I'm 29 now, so I've been playing for almost 20 years in tournaments, and I'm still always getting better. Luckily, we play a game that you can continue to play even up into Mark's old age, and you can continue to improve. And what I've noticed over the course of time is there are certain areas within my game, or most people's game, where you get the most bang for your buck spending your time there. And I've found just through keeping track of statistics and recording all of my tournament scores and my regular scores, and really paying attention to all the numbers, so like kind of where the low-hanging fruit is. I think there are areas that you can spend a little bit of time and get a little bit more out of. But it's all multifaceted. So we got tee shots, we've got fairway woods off the deck coming into par 5s, we've got long irons into long par 3s, we've got iron distance control, controlling your curve, like Mark said, having a one-directional ball flight that's predictable, knowing where your miss is going to go, know how far your wedges go, know how far everything goes, then being able to control wedges to different distances, being able to chip and hit sand shots and flop shots, and be able to putt, control your distance control with that, improve your stroke. And all along the way, while you're trying to improve all of these things, you're trying to improve your technique while also improve your proficiency in those areas. So I think once you break it down, you kind of realize how deep the process gets. But once you break it down, you can actually make it more of a step-by-step process. And for me, it's been a step-by-step process. I've found myself really focusing on a couple of core areas each year and trying to improve them, and then really keeping track of the improvement of that progress. For me, I use statistics. So it's easy to keep track of progress with data, but sometimes it can be a little discouraging because when you're working on something, say a swing change in your driver, where you're trying to be able to control curve a little bit better, so you're changing up some positions or maybe the way your body moves, you may not see those results right away. You might not see them in 6 months. You might not even see them in a year. I know for me, just with my driving, just as an anecdote, I've been working on the same few things for 6 years, and I'm just now finally starting to see the benefits from that. 6 years. And I tell my students that, and the looks on their faces, it's just surprise. But even Tiger Woods, the best player in the world, every time he changed his swing, it took him 2-3 years to nail that swing change down. And he's the best player in the world, the most talented, and the hardest working. So we're all playing catch up to that guy. And if he can only do it in 2 or 3 years, it's going to take most of us a lot longer. And I think if you go into it knowing that it's a process, it's a marathon, I think that makes that process of improvement a little bit more attainable and seems less distant and far out and impossible.
Yeah, for sure. And Michael Little, what are your thoughts, when you think about some of the things you've done with your game, because you're interesting. I think there's a certain parallel to you and some of our listeners out there, because you actually didn't start playing golf until you were a little bit older, right? You didn't play as a little kid.
Yeah, that's
And
correct.
you've turned into consistently one of the best players in the Philly section for the last several years.
Yeah, that's correct. I didn't start playing until I was 22, and for me, when I first started playing, it was more of, to echo a little bit of what Braden's saying with Tiger Woods. It was watching a lot of what really good players did, and I hung around good players a lot, even though I wasn't one of them. I just basically said to them, "Hey, let me learn what you guys do, so I can learn from that," and surrounded myself with really good people, and surrounded myself with a team, and that team really helped me improve. And if it was just more about how to approach a shot or how to play a golf course or what, club selection, what equipment to play, what coach to go see that would fit my swing best, or what I wanted to accomplish the most. It really was about the team that was around me. And I did a lot of things by trial and error. I can remember in college, there was 1 month where I committed to swinging at 50% on every single shot that I hit, so I could learn how to hit the ball straight. And I still use these things today when I start to struggle in my golf swing. And back in 2013, that's when I really started diving in and saying I need to develop a team around me to learn how to win golf tournaments. And it was just literally going to the best players in our area and asking them, what do you do? How do I become a better player? And they all had a similar message, and it was find your strengths and find your weaknesses, and really hammer home those strengths and improve in the areas that you're weak. And Mark Sheptick was one of those players that I went to talk to. And the biggest thing that I learned, especially from Mark, was, Mike, if you're in the arena, you deserve to be there. And I think, as we all improve and as we all start to get higher level of play, we start to be in different tournaments and with different competition. And we have to remember that we're there because we earned that. It wasn't given to us. We earned that. And that really, for me, was huge on helping me improve. And I try to pass that along to a lot of my students that I teach as well. And, it's Braden and Mark really touched on a lot of this. And for me, it's, this journey is still fresh for me, and I'm still going through it, as Braden said. And it really is about that team.
Okay, and I'm going to dive just a little deeper than that in terms of the being more specific about really outside of, okay, we're going to look at statistics. We know we need to work on stuff, whatever that is, to get better and learn the game and learn how to get the ball in the hole. But like when I think about it, if I have a member at Aronimick or someone that comes to me, whether it's a junior or even if it's a middle-aged beginner, like the first thing I get them to understand is like trying to get better at golf, learning, improving, and improving at golf is no different than trying to learn guitar, learn piano, learn ice skating. Like you have to dive in. And, there's just no magic pill in golf. Braden said it takes time and it takes years. And I'm very honest with my students, and I tell them that. And some people will get scared away, but if you really want to get better at golf, you have to dive in. You have to buy in to the process. You have to understand it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in one season. And it sure as heck is not going to happen in 1 or 2 lessons a year. Like you need to be under the guidance of a good teacher. And there's a lot of good teachers nowadays. That's the nice thing. There are. But you need to have regular guidance and consistent guidance from a coach. So don't think 1 or 2 lessons is going to get it done, and don't jump around to different teachers every 2 or 3 lessons or 2 or 3 times a year and think that the guy down the street has the magic pill. The magic pill is in sticking with the process, putting in the work, practicing, being patient, staying determined, and sticking with it. And in the willingness, as I like to say, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable when making swing changes. Our swing is the tool that moves the golf ball, whether it's distance, direction, trajectory, whatever it is. Our swing is what gets the job done. And you have to make your swing better, whatever that is, to be able to control the ball better and whatever aspect of ball flight that is. So, when I think about that, that's really important. And that willingness to commit to it, the willingness to make changes and stick with it, the willingness to say, I know this is going to be a 2, 3, 4, 5-year process. It's really a lifetime process of trying to get better at this game. It's just the reality of it. One of the things too is that we have to embrace failure. That's okay. It's one of the interesting things in golf is we learn valuable lessons from the mistakes we make on the golf course, right? So whatever that is, course management decision, our putting, a bad swing. And we have to embrace that failure and use that as motivation to work hard, to get better, to grind, to dive in with the process. Now, the specifics of taking lessons, I am personally a big proponent of weekly lessons under the guidance of a good coach, using things like video, TrackMan, K-Vest, force plates, whatever that is, to learn. Some teachers like to just say, all right, do this, feel that, and try to make the ball flight better. For me personally, I'm a big believer in creating concepts for students and helping them understand what they're doing now, what they need to do, and then what we're going to do to make things better. When I think about some of my students, sometimes you think, well, I wonder if, I have people that I think might do really well because they're athletic and they don't necessarily do as well as I think. And then other students surprise me because there's also the ingredients of being a good student. Those variables matter in your improvement process. Are you going to work hard? Are you going to embrace changes? Are you going to stick with it? So factors like that matter. Are you going to listen? Are you going to buy in? Are you going to argue? Are you not going to argue? Are you going to say, you know what, that 1 or 2 lessons was too technical or it was too uncomfortable, I'm going to go back to my old ways? If you do, it's just going to limit your success. And so, one example, not only for me with my game growing up, but I'll use an example as an adult. So I grew up in Connecticut. I played a little bit of pond hockey. I always enjoyed hockey. And over the last 7 years as a grown adult, I've gotten more involved in hockey than I had ever been in my life. So it's like learning something new, whether, I use guitar or piano a lot, or if it's someone listening to this podcast that's maybe newer to golf, or they're a higher handicap and they want to get their handicap down, I just dove in, head first into the process of trying to improve with my hockey. I take, in the winters when I was down in Florida, I would take 3 or 4 lessons a week to try to get my skating better, my puck handling, my shooting. And now that I'm back up in Philadelphia year round, I still take 1 or 2 lessons a week, and then I play another 2 to 3 times a week. And getting better at skating and then mixing in a puck and a stick and then doing that on the move shooting and then doing it around people that want to rip your head off or steal the puck from you is not easy. And I would say that probably in the last 7 years, I always equate it to golf. I'd say my hockey handicap, I was maybe like a 20, 22 handicap. And I'd say I'm probably legitimately maybe like a 9 handicap now on the ice. And I'm improving. But the reason was, if I fell, I got back up and I kept going. I refused to quit. I refused to give in, because some lessons were harder than others. My coach is teaching me edge work on my skates and maneuvering and turning, things that I never thought I would do, let alone do it with a puck, and let alone do it with a puck in a game. It wasn't easy, but I stuck with it. So I am a huge proponent of regular lessons under the guidance of a coach, whether that's your short game, your full swing, playing lessons on the course, learning how to score, learning how to play the game. Those are items that I think are very important. Mark, do you want to piggyback on any of that?
No, I agree. Everything that you all three said, great information from 3 successful, from a bunch of golf pros. The only thing I always tried to treat, as I became more detailed, I noticed improvement became greater and faster. What I mean by that is, like Braden said about keeping stats. If you have stuff to fall back on and actually see the data, that would tell me, are you making a profit or are you not? In lessons, I use a lot of technology, not to teach with, but to measure with. If you know how to communicate high-end technology in a simple message, just saying, hey, your path was this, now it's this, your ball speed's this because you did this. When people see things and they can actually see the improvement, it makes the process and the journey a lot easier for someone to attain what you're trying to get them to do. And then when they're ready, a big part of improvement is taking them out in the golf course and spending some time watching them play, watching them react. On the range, when there's no outcome, it's a lot easier. When on the golf course, they're gonna swing the club a little different. You start seeing how their brain starts working, and sometimes just teaching them how to think around the golf course becomes, or how to calm down, or how to handle a bad shot, or you hit a mediocre shot and it plugs into a lip, and how do they respond to that? You can kind of see if it's a member guest or a club championship or a high level tournament. You kind of see where they lose it or where they don't lose it. But you can't put a price tag on work ethic. You can't put a price tag on, do they buy into the process? It's not an easy road. And when you make a swing change, you're changing your movement pattern, you're changing your timing.
Yeah.
And whoever said it, you have to be uncomfortable with a different outcome. And one of my sports psychologists told me many, many years ago, you better learn to be uncomfortable. And pressure seeks comfort. A lot of times when I revert back to my old swing, it's when pressure mounts. And Deborah Graham told me many years ago, you got your driving range swing and your golf course swing, and pressure seeks comfort. And that comfort is, I know I'm going to miss it, but I know how I'm going to miss it, and I'm going to revert back. Or do I fight through with it and stay and say, I'm going through these changes. I can do it on the range, now I got to do it on the golf course. Then I got to do it in competition. But those reps, those work ethics, and maintaining that journey is I think how you make that positive change to improvement.
For sure. And you said a word there that I actually wanted to dive a little more into, is the aspect of helping people improve with technology. So, Michael, why don't you talk a little bit about what technology you're using and some of the big, valuable key points that you found that have been helpful for the students that you work with using technology?
So for me, I use a few pieces of technology. The biggest one is the Quintic ball roll, which is going to capture the golf ball and golf club at 720 frames per second. And it's very simple to follow along with. Everything is color coordinated on the screen. And the way that I present it to everyone is very easy to follow along. And the thing that I enjoy the most about technology, and especially with Quintic ball roll, is when you're at your best, I can measure that. And if something ever goes bad, then we can always go back to that data and look and say, where were you at your best? Because sometimes when we're at our best, we feel like, oh, well, that just didn't work. Well, it's sort of like this conversation. Well, how much practice, how much time did that student put into that? Do we need to just go back to where they were at their best there? Maybe they didn't work on it long enough, and we have to get back to that. So I really like going back in time to help the player to continue to improve. And I do the same thing with TrackMan as well. At Clubhouse 54, we, I have memberships there, and they all have their own profile in TrackMan, and they'll send me the report and say, "Hey, Mike, this was a really good night. Please look at these numbers," and I'll star that and I'll save that. And if they ever come to me and say, "Hey, I'm really struggling," we'll go back to that data and we'll look and see what has changed to help them. And to me, that is it. Not only can technology help us as coaches, but it can really help, us get people back on track.
Good. And Braden, what technology do you like to use, and the benefits that you see your students get from it?
Yeah, I'm a simple guy. I don't have anything super complex. I just use high speed video, and I use TrackMan. And when I originally learned golf swing mechanics, it was all on video. It was started with a Casio Exilum camera. I was not using an iPhone, and then now an iPad, this big old iPad. I didn't have a TV screen. I didn't have any of that stuff like we have now. So when I first started, it was the Casio Exilum with the screen that's this big, and you're looking at it and you're trying to zoom in on the positions. And that was how I learned. And the more I learn with all of the different pieces of technology, force plates, K-vest, you name it, the more I go back to, I can see a lot of that stuff on video. And then I think all of the technology for me is really confirmed in depth with the fancy technology.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer. Like, one of my big philosophies as a coach is that it's my job to educate, motivate, and inspire my students. And so I love, the two pieces of technology that I use the most would be video, high speed video, and TrackMan. And the reason that I mentioned that kind of that mantra that I live by, to educate, motivate, and inspire my students, is because I think sometimes people can be a little intimidated by technology, like on TrackMan, and you look at the numbers and people are, it looks like Greek to some people. They're like, what is this? What does it mean? And how the heck is it going to benefit me? And so that's why I really I like to be able to measure it for myself and for the student, and combine that with video. It's very powerful. And of course, nowadays with, we have force plates, Adironimic, we have Swing Catalyst, and Mark uses Gasp, two of the leaders in that field. But I'm a big proponent of getting my students to understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and more importantly, what are we going to do to fix it? And what numbers, let's say on TrackMan, might we look at to match up with the improvement of their swing technique and what we see on video. So I'm a big believer that I want to educate my students so they know what low point is or what attack angle is and why it's important and how that translates into a better golf shot for them. It doesn't mean I'm going to do a dissertation of 7 different numbers in one lesson, but if I can give them one drop here, one drop there, so they feel like they understand more and they're empowered to feel like they know more of what's going on. And if they went and practiced on the simulators and they wanted to look at 1 or 2 numbers on TrackMan and say, okay, this is what I've been working on with John in the last few lessons. Oh, my swing direction is less to the left, or my low point is getting more forward. And yes, you know what? I'm feeling this in my swing and I'm feeling a better shot. And look, there's my low point now, 3 or 4 inches after the ball. I like to educate my students. It doesn't mean you have to give them a lot at once, but I want my students to know and understand and to be comfortable with the technology. I always say, I've been saying for years, I want my students and the members at my club to know more than people that are members at clubs down the street. And I believe that that's part of my job as a teacher and a coach in a clear, simple way without getting overly deep and technical. There's no reason. Our students and our members at clubs are intelligent human beings. I feel like personally they deserve to know and understand what's going on. That's my belief, because concepts cue motor behavior. If people have a better understanding of what they're doing and what they need to do and why they're doing it, their brain can feed the body to make things happen.
Yeah, John, as a indoor facility owner, I live and die by exactly what you just said. They have to be educated, especially not being able to see that ball flight. That's great stuff.
Yeah. Michael, what are some of the things, like some specifics with the Quintic ball roll? Like maybe give us like a top 5 things that you've seen, because that might come across as a little overwhelming at first to some people looking at all the graphs and the screens and the data. What are maybe like the top 5 things that you've seen with Quintic that have helped people understand and actually get better?
Well, number one would be the golf ball roll, and that's understanding how the ball rolls and understanding that there is a launch angle, there is a smash factor, and the golf ball has tilt to it when it leaves the putter. That would be the number one thing. There's a screen on Quintic ball roll that shows us the 3D spin off of the club face. And most people that walk in the door, their golf ball is tilting anywhere from 30 to 60 degrees. And this 3D spin will then show that coming off the face. And they most of them also have backspin on the ball as it leaves the putter. So it's that screen to me is the most powerful. And then really the home screen, as you see behind me here, the home screen, that's another one where, how many people actually see the ball leave the face and roll in real time like that at 720 frames per second. So you can see it bouncing, if it's bouncing off the face. Are we driving it low? Are we launching it too high? And I like how Quintic shows you everything that's happening. So if your club face is open, if the club face is closed, it's going to give you a 3D image of that. If your shaft angle is too forward or too back, you'll get all that information from it. And I don't like to get too technical with it. If the 3 of you were in the room, obviously I'm going to get a little more technical, but it really is just simple to follow along, especially with the color coordination of Quintic. And that's really what I tell everyone. Look for green numbers. And if you have amber numbers, you're still doing good. And that color coordination will really help them follow along to then not have to really necessarily know what the number means, but if they light up the screen green, they know they're doing something right. And to me, that's huge. And I hope that other, you know, pieces of technology out there will start to adopt a little bit of that as well, even though I know that it's difficult in some situations. But I hope that we can start to go more down that road with some of the technology to show people that, in a color coordination way of how they're making improvements to their swing or to whatever they're trying to do there on that piece of technology.
Yeah, I like that, kind of creating some ranges. That's good. All right, Mark Sheftick, in my opinion, one of the top guys in America on ground forces and body movement patterns. And we're lucky to have you right here in the Philadelphia area. For those of you who don't know, Mark is not only the director of instruction at Sunnybrook Golf Club, but has the Sheftick Performance Center in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania, conveniently located right off the turnpike, right? Literally right there, easy to get to. And it's a neat complex. And in there, in the winters, you have your gas force plates. And then in the summer, you bring those to Sunnybrook, if I'm not mistaken. So, Mark, talk a little bit about maybe some of the aspects of GASP and the force plate technology that you've seen be able to help people in that process of coming in and working on their game and trying to get their swing better.
Well, when I started to really work with GASP and started to really understand ground forces, I started to understand movement patterns and how everyone moves different. Force plates turned me into a different type of teacher. And this is my opinion, not saying it's right or wrong. I teach emotion, not a position. That's something I'm a big believer in. Golf is not a static position, and I don't look at static positions or go to here, go to there. I try to teach emotion that is built for their build. I can't teach me at 49, let's get that right. I can't swing like Adam Scott. I don't move my body. I have different limitations. So I have to figure out what works best for me. How do I get the most out of my body? How do I make it efficient? How do I prevent less injury? And then the force plates, basically we're measuring a lateral, a rotational, and a vertical. And we take those forces that they measure and we try to figure out what's strong, what's weak. Do we need a little more of this and a little more of that? And we find a balance to it. It can really make a big difference on how they move their body. The other thing that blew me away with using force plates, and this is probably the last thing I would ever think about, it also shows me intention. So I had a kid come in and his forces with his driver was the same as a 7-iron. So what would that tell me? Okay, a driver is built for distance. A 7-iron is built for a certain distance, but also proximity. And I showed him that why are your driver forces the same with a 7-iron? And maybe that's why you don't hit a lot of greens. So we actually had to reduce his forces so he could actually hit the ball to a spot versus all over the map. And when I teach my students, when they think of motion, I always tell my students golf is really two things. You have distance and you have accuracy. Distance goes up, accuracy goes down. Accuracy goes up, distance goes down. So not only do you learn about the body, you also learn about what's going in their mind and how they're using their tools. You try to find a balance. I'm going to repeat myself again. Find the balance that's going to take away injury-prone motions that can cause, especially with juniors, that can cause some severe problems. So, and then it's my job, Michael's job, Braden's job, your job. How do we take all that knowledge and communicate it and create a simple message that they can understand it?
Well, and that's what I was going to say. At the end of the day, to me, all this technology, like I said, on the surface, for some people, it can be intimidating or scary, whatever you want to call it. But if you have a coach that does a good job, at the end of the day, they're still just teaching you golf. We use these pieces of technology to measure, or at the end of the day, just give you a couple simple thoughts and feels, and then look at the numbers change.
And John, just to throw one more thing in there, and you know, road to improvement. You can also, I look at that also as road to improvement as an instructor. I remember diving down into gas force plates, and the first time I saw the amount of information I needed to learn, I had a choice: run from it and go with what I know, or dive deep into it, get uncomfortable, and try to figure it out. And I remember going down that journey, listening to people talk well over my head, but it just seemed to me that, you know what, if I want to be an instructor that's going to help people at all different levels, I think I'm going to need to learn this. And it is taking me, no exaggeration, minimum 6-7 years to kind of get a really good grasp of everything that's being displayed by looking at those force plates. And then, to be honest with you, the better I got at it, the better I understood it, the more simple the message was to the student, because I'm not guessing. I'm giving them, you know, detailed advice. I'm measuring, and the student will buy in that. I think the student gives you, you know, just trust you a little more because you have data backing up with what you're doing.
Yeah. And, you know, I was going to say, one of the other aspects to using technology is, let's face it, a lot of people, it makes the learning process more fun, more entertaining, more interesting, more educational. And I can tell you now that we have the new, you know, the new teaching facility at Aronimink. You know, most of the clubs that I had taught at in the past had like a teaching center or a learning center. And some of our members at Aronimink have not really experienced that specific environment before. And many of them, just in the first month of us having it open, are really enjoying it and are embracing the technology and are learning. And I think that's something to be, there's something to be said for that, for anyone that's listening that might be a little nervous about it. It's at the end of the day, this technology has helped us teachers become better teachers, more knowledgeable, and actually in a lot of ways we use it to simplify. We're not guessing anymore. There's too much science, too much data, too many things are being measured and have been measured for the last several years, where we have a lot more answers than we've ever had before. And I think that, you know, it's kind of an interesting thing. You know, it's this whole improvement process. It's like, it's kind of a metaphor for life in a way of, you know, hopefully every day we're striving to be better people, you know, do the right thing, be better coaches, or be better players. You know, you made the point, Mark, that's really was a big part of how this whole Philly Foursome thing started. You know, Mark, you got us all together and we wanted to learn from each other, to push ourselves and get uncomfortable and realize there's more out there that we don't know, so that we can help more people get better and enjoy the game.
And I'm going to just tackle on one thing and I'll shut up. The reason why I put this together, in my humble opinion, I think at what we do, I think you guys are the best. I mean, in this short period of time, it's amazing how much as long as I've done this, it's amazing how much I've learned from each of you three. And because of the friendship and the conversations and watching the videos that everyone's putting out, it's pretty awesome that I get to learn more from three great teachers.
Yeah, it's been really cool. Braden, do you have any final thoughts in closing?
No, I mean, I think you guys hit the nail on the head with everything. I think at a certain point we might be repeating ourselves, but kind of to go back to all of your points about the improvement process, there's a good quote from Tiger Woods talking about adding on to his game. And I saw this quote get posted on Instagram the other day. I remember him talking about it, and then it brought that up, and it's kind of perfect timing. He says, "First, I understand what I need to do. Then it looks better. Then it feels better. then it performs better in practice, then on the course, and then finally in a tournament. And I think that is so well said, and that's coming from the best player in the world. And I think that kind of epitomizes the improvement process, especially if you're a competitive player. It's a lot of steps, and those are just the big general steps. And within each step, there's a lot of little steps. So having patience in that process is crucial, and having a good coach who can lead you along the way and give you the right information, because having the right information is crucial in that improvement process if you want to truly get better.
Yeah, and I always say, when it comes to the process, embrace it, enjoy it, and be patient with it, and have fun with it. Remember, at the end of the day, you're in an environment where you're learning, you're improving, and that lesson might not always reveal itself today or tomorrow, but it's like I always say, it's like compounding interest. The more you invest, the more you make, right? The more you make, the more you have to invest. So it's what I call exponential improvement. You know, all the lessons that you put in today and tomorrow and the next few months may or may not show itself at the second half of the season, but all that work just helps you get to the next step, where maybe next season things kind of click and you take that next big leap to the next step. So why don't we leave it at that? This has been a fun discussion, gentlemen. And just a little preview of our next podcast, episode number 3 is going to be, speaking of technology and smart people, with our good friend, Dr. Rob Neal, one of the world's leading golf biomechanics experts. I've been fortunate to know Doc for a long time. I know Mark Sheftick and his dad, Ted, have done a lot of work with Dr. Rob Neal. And Doc is going to come up to Philadelphia and spend some time with the Philly Foursome at the end of this month. And we are going to have an opportunity to interview him for episode 3 of the Philly Foursome podcast. So we want to thank you for listening in. We hope you enjoyed this. And like I said, we have a lot more interesting stuff lined up in episodes to come. So thank you for your support. Don't forget, you can check us out on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and at patreon.com. That's where you could find our monthly subscription channel. We put out 16 videos a month, a minimum of 16 a month. In some weeks, you'll get a little bit more than that, totaling more than 200 videos in a year. So thank you again for listening in. Guys, it's been great to be with you, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, guys.